Imagine that you go to a museum that is truly still under construction and you're sitting there walking around seeing all this drop-dead, gorgeous artwork, but then you walk down a certain aisle, you keep turning in, getting a little bit farther into the museum, and you notice that, yeah, there's still some potential to be in here. That's the best way to talk about this movie. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a brand new movie review. Today I'm going to be discussing The Goldfinch. This movie is directed by John Crowley, who directed Brooklyn a couple years back, which I absolutely loved. Brooklyn was one of my favorite films of that year and introduced us to the world of Saoirse Ronan, which, thank you, because before then, not a lot of us had known her, and now she's a household name, thank God. The Goldfinch stars Jeffrey Wright, Dennis O'Hare, Luke Wilson, Ansel Elgort, Sarah Paulson, Nicole Kidman, Finn Wolfhard, and of course, Oaks Fegley. This was a movie that I was definitely looking forward to due to the trailers. The trailers were the biggest things about it. I've never read the book. I've talked to some people who've read the book, and they absolutely love the book. They love a lot of aspects of it, and I've heard that it's a very hard book to get through, but sometimes those are the best things to kind of get to and dive into because of those endings, because of the nitty-gritty of those books. And within The Goldfinch, while the trailers had me super intrigued, as the buzz came out of TIFF, I'm going to be honest, it really dropped my expectations seeing how many people really did not like this movie. But as I go into the movie, I still try to keep an open-minded situation going in, and I went in, and I will say this, it's fine. There are a lot of issues with this movie. I definitely felt it in the later half, but we'll get to that. In the story of this, it's about a 13-year-old New Yorker, Theodore Decker's life, who is turned upside down when his mother is killed in a terrorist attack at a museum of art. And confused in the rubble of the tragedy, he steals a priceless piece of art known as the Goldfinch. Now, there is very much more to this story. This is the story about PTSD. This is the story about this kid and pretty much his life turning upside down in the aftermath of all that, and how his life revolves around this painting, and in general how his life revolves after this bombing. There's a lot to this story, and I feel like that's kind of what the biggest issue of this movie was particularly the story. Now, with a 1,000-page book, that's definitely going to be hard to transfer into a big 2.5-hour movie, which when you get to 2.5 hours, there's a lot there. Now, I don't mind how long a movie is as long as the payoff is satisfying. And I did not like the ending of this movie. And I think that's probably my biggest issue with the movie. Because throughout the whole story, they introduce a lot of different subplots, a lot of different characters, which in a book territory, I guarantee all of it made sense. And a lot of it probably felt satisfying by the end. But as I'm watching the movie, I felt very conflicted with a lot of them. I loved every subplot that they opened up, except one, which is actually the one that revolves around the most by the ending. And I really did not like that turn. Of course, no spoilers. If you're a fan or you're someone who wants to see the movie, I don't want to spoil it for you. With all those different subplots, I felt like they did not focus enough on the ones that were the most important or the ones that were the most emotional to Theo's character. They focused on one of them that is still important to his character, but I can tell that in the book there was probably a more satisfying conclusion to everything else, and other than just this point. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe book readers can tell me that for sure, that you're wrong. It's the same way in the book. But still, for me, I felt dissatisfied with a lot of the different subplots that they open up, but they didn't dive into enough. And when they dived into it, I started getting so gravitated to them, and then they just never really went anywhere by the end. And I felt very unsatisfied with this movie by the end of it, that I'm just sitting there very conflicted and very disinterested and, in fact, frustrated by the end. Rather than just feeling frustrated with the story, I felt more frustrated because Theodore Decker is one of the most interesting characters that I've seen in the film. And like I equivalated earlier in this review, saying that how this is a drop-dead gorgeous movie to look at due to the fact that it's Roger Deakins making the movie. I mean, my God, the cinematography for this is outstanding. I mean, jaw dropped. This is one of the best looking films of the year. And you can equivalate it to walking through a museum that's half done, looking at the stunning art, but as you get deeper into it, you notice that there's still a lot of potential in there to make this better. And that's what I felt like this. There's so much potential in this story to make this movie better, to make this movie stronger. And with that 2.5-hour runtime, there's a lot of stuff you could have cut out. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't think was necessarily needed in there. But there's a lot of attention to details. There's a lot of excellent shots. But it's Theodore Decker's character that is so personal, but is also so complex and so interesting that not just Oaks Fegley, who plays the younger version of him, but also Ansel Elgort, I thought both of them gave fantastic performances in this role, and I was so on board for Theo Decker's character. Even if I did still feel frustrated by the end with him, every single complexity that these actors have to go through to give such a subtle performance and the tragedy that it bestows them is one of the most powerful things in this film, and is one of the reasons that I truly was not falling asleep. And that's the truth. If it wasn't for Theo Decker's character, even if I did feel frustrated by the subplots by the end, his character is so well portrayed in this, and the performances for me were outstanding. Talking about some of the secondary characters, when it's Nicole Kidman, Sarah Paulson, Luke Wilson, and Jeffrey Wright, they're all doing a decent job again, but it just goes down to all these characters coming down to surface level intros where they don't get much to do, but just being that basic level support for Theo's character. Even at times, a lot of Theo's developments are a little bit surface level as well. Before I give you guys my final thoughts on this movie, make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and if you guys are new here, I do tons of early movie reviews like this on a daily basis, and I love talking with you guys in the comments about movies and all sorts of geeky stuff, so make sure to comment down below and let me know what your guys' thoughts are on this movie. Plus, guys, if you guys are new here and you guys want to see movies early, go check out Cinematography Films down below as well, and a big thank you to all my Patreon supporters, because without you, I wouldn't be able to do this. Goldfinch is a frustrating movie for me. It is one that, while I don't think deserves all the hate in the world, a lot of people were really saying this was a disaster. I wouldn't go as far to say it's a disaster, but I would say that as I see all the potential in here, it became very frustrating by the end when I got that ending, and I didn't feel satisfied for sitting there for 2.5 hours. This is a movie that I think has potential. I think there's a lot of potential in there, and I think Theo Decker is one of the most complex and really interesting characters that could have been dived into more. I want to read the book now. I want to get more out of this. I feel like I was missing out on stuff, and even though it's 2.5 hours, I think you could have added 30 more minutes and I would have been fine. I think if you added more in there to make this story more complex, I would have been fine with it. But with a lot of these storylines never really ending up anywhere and kind of just drifting off into nothing, and then even with Theo's character kind of just, I get what they were going for, but I never felt satisfied by the end with this character and where everything ended up going. Very frustrating to say that, for the least, because I thought the trailers were great. Roger Deakins is one of the best cinematographers alive and ever working in Hollywood, and this is again one of the most gorgeous films of the year, if not the most gorgeous film of the year. Plus, with a great score, I mean, there was so much potential to get in here. John Crowley directing the film, who did Brooklyn. You have fantastic actors all in here: Nicole Kidman, Ansel Elgort, Luke Wilson, freaking Sarah Paulson, and just nothing ever really worked by the end. It's a very much a surface level film that doesn't dive into any of the substance that it should have, and by the end I kind of just walked out and I was like, I don't ever need to see that again. So with all that said, I'm going to give the Goldfinch a C-. I think some people will get something out of this. I think others will probably really appreciate it. But overall, I think moaning people will be disappointed by this. But if you're a book reader, please comment down below and let me know what your guys' thoughts are on this movie. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts the most. But of course, in general, if you just want to comment down below, let's talk about this movie, guys. Thank you guys again so much for watching this. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Check out Cinematography Films. Thank you to all my Patreon supporters. And of course, until next time, stay classy.